Thanks for joining us. We're doing a homebuyer seminar today. In the COVID times, a lot of people are not getting out to homebuyer seminars, so we thought we'd bring one to you. My name's Steve Colon from Colon Villaplana. I'm sitting next to my friend Ralph.
Ralph Cabay from Empire Inspectors. Thank you, Steve.
Introduce you to Giovanni.
I'm Giovanni Gira with Rand Realty.
Heidi Nolasco, Chase Home Lending.
Veronica Suarez, Remax Distinguished Homes and Property.
Thanks, folks. So, all right, so you're excited, you want to buy a home and you don't know what to do. Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get pre-approved to make sure that you know what you can afford to buy or what you want to spend monthly. So, Heidi, tell us a little bit about that.
So the first step where we start everything, we start with pulling your credit. With your credit, we realize what your current debt is, what your monthly payments are, and we also going to look at your income. Your income, it's going to determine based on your debt, what monthly payments can you afford, and obviously, do you feel comfortable with your income? And obviously, you got to have also your assets. So we're going to look at your bank statements to make sure that you have all the money you need for your down payment and your closing costs.
So, Heidi, when you pre-approve someone, and you hear horror stories about people that were pre-approved and then don't qualify, what are some of the things that you do so that your clients are comfortable that they know they're shopping for a home they can actually close on?
Okay, so the first thing, it's really looking at your overall picture, right? Sometimes someone comes to me and they say, well, I'm not ready. I want to try to do this next year. So I always say, let's look at your picture now, right? Because then now I can see where you're standing in regards to credit, right? Maybe there's like a car loan that, might appear that if we work on a plan for next year, you can send the extra payments and then we knock it down, then at that point you will qualify. So the main thing is even if you're thinking I'm going to do this a year from now, sit down a year from now to make sure that you have all the key stuff that you need, which again, it's your credit, your income, and your assets. We can always come up with a plan, a year ahead.
Gotcha. So when you're pre-approval, you're going to make sure I think you're referring to debt-to-income ratio, right?
Yes.
Yep. Make sure the debt-to-income ratio is right. You're going to give them a letter that's saying, hey, I've looked at their taxes, I've looked at their income, their bank statements, and this is what you should be shopping for in this range. And once that happens, folks, that's when it's time to meet with one of your agents. And we have two excellent agents here that we've been working together a long time. I'll let Giovanni go first. Giovanni, what's one of the things that you're going to do once you get that pre-approval?
Well, once we have the pre-approval with the client, I actually check in with the lender to again understand the whole picture of the client. What exactly are they looking for? What exactly can we do with their budget? We check taxes. We really need to make sure that taxes, either if you're buying in the Bronx or in the city or in the suburbs, because we also work in the suburbs, those taxes make a difference in your pre-approval. So that budget will determine what we're able to find for the client. Then obviously I'll sit down with the client and see what they're interested in and what can I find for them within their pre-approval and their budget.
So those are some of the things Giovanni does. You get a pre-approval from a client. What are some of the things you want to pull from the client so you're going to be able to assist them?
So once I receive the pre-approval, though they met with the mortgager and I know they went over with them, I like to recap what was discussed. The first thing is that I do discuss, I'd like to know what their income is because I would have an idea if the pre-approval was correct. Because a lot of times you get a pre-approval and maybe the mortgage didn't do a good job in vetting them or checking their income. So I kind of double check that. And once I get that information, I also double check with the mortgager so that I know that we're going to proceed in the right direction and we're not going to have any bumps in the road. I'm also going to discuss with them the mortgage payment. What was the mortgage payment discussed? A lot of times they come to the table and they have no idea what the mortgage payment was. So I sit down and go over how to calculate a mortgage payment. I share my mortgage calculator with them. And then I go, well, how much are you paying now versus how much you're going to be paying in your new home? Is that going to be okay, that jump that you're making? Most times they go, absolutely not. That's way too much. Well, that's what the pre-approval states. So even though they're approved for $1 million, doesn't mean they want to buy $1 million. So that's when we narrow down what's comfortable for them.
All right, that's actually excellent you just said that. A pre-approval itself just means what can you afford? That's like me saying, well, I can afford a Ferrari, but oh, I can't actually afford a Ferrari, but that's like me saying I can afford a luxury sports car, I'll say, but do I really want to be in that build? Do I want to be, quote unquote, house poor? So that's very important. So some things you guys do, as you're saying, are make sure that they're going to be comfortable in owning a home, because owning a home is a great investment and it should be a joyous moment. Now, once you've got the, what they're looking for, you've, vetted the pre-approval, vetted the lender, and you're comfortable with the pre-approval, how does the whole process of, starting to look for a home go? Giovanni?
Well, I like to have a consultation with them because yes, we figure out the financial aspect of it, but what are their goals? What are their dreams? What is your 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 20-year plan? Are we going into your dream home, or are you going on your stepping stone? This home may be the stepping stone to buy your dream home. Okay, so are we going to be picky in certain areas of the house? And also, I'll introduce my team. Obviously, I'll introduce the attorney who will work with them, meaning you, the inspector. And I'll tell them the whole process. I give them a lot of information in regards to, okay, I've experienced purchasing or selling myself, and I know what to expect. And if you're looking in different areas, I know the what ifs. Okay, you have oil tanks, you have septic tanks. Little things like that make a difference, and education is what really makes a difference in the buyers.
Very great. Veronica, what do you have to add to that?
So once we determine that they're happy with what their mortgage payment is going to be, the next step is determining what they're looking for. So we narrow down, like Giovanni says, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, what are they looking for in a house? What would their ideal house be? And then we kind of pull up and see what's out there in the price range so that they have an idea of what's in their budget. So they're not surprised later on when they receive an email and these houses are not what they were looking for, but then it's not in their budget. So then we determine, and at that point, do they want to go a little higher because their qualification does allow them to, and they can figure out and have an idea. And a lot of times they usually say, send me everything and we can narrow it down as we go along. And then from this point on, we can do a consultation, and that goes into the buyer agency itself on how they want to be represented by us. If they decide they want to do buyer agency with us and we sign them up and we move forward, just means that they work solely with us, and we'll do everything that we can to get them to their dream home that they're looking for.
All right, so that's a good point. You brought buyer agency. So why should a person that's looking for a home not just go right to that listing agent? And since you brought it up, I'll ask you first. What's the benefit of working with a buyer agent?
Well, there's two ways to be represented. So they can, in fact, call a listing agent and they can show them the house, but that agent represents the seller, not them. So I pretty much tell them what the differences are. If they were to hire me and I represent them, then my fiduciary responsibility is to them solely, and they don't have to worry about that they're dealing with an agent that's representing someone else. So my job is to get them the best price for the house that they're looking for, and then we'll go over how we're going to negotiate it for them. So at the end of the day, I'm just giving them education on the entire process of how to get to their home, but they always make the ultimate decision.
Gotcha.
Dealing with a selling agent, they just pretty much just take their offer and they're going to work in the best interest of the seller, and they may wind up paying higher for the house than they had to.
Giovanni, is there any downside with working with a buyer's agent?
Absolutely not. So just as a seller will hire an agent to represent them and their best interests, the buyers have the same right to get that. So hiring an agent would assure them that we will look after their best interests, make sure that they get the best deal, not only in number, but also in terms. So there's absolutely no problem. There's no reason why a buyer shouldn't have a buyer agent.
Okay, great. So you got a point now. They've got the buyer agent. The buyer agent was able to get them the best deal possible for that home, and now the memo's prepared. At that point, the memo would go out to both the sales attorney and the buyer's attorney. The sales attorney would then prepare a contract, send it out to the buyer's attorney. The buyer's attorney, typically, if they're a good attorney, are going to review the contract, add a buyer's rider, and there's protections for them in that rider. If you guys are interested, you can go on my website and look at what's in a buyer's rider. But to save time, once that's done, what's happening simultaneously is hopefully they're getting an inspection. And Ralph, what's an inspection and why is it important?
I'm glad you asked that. For one thing, in New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey, being a home inspector is a license. So you're required to have a license in those states. So as you were being referred to, you should always do your research online to see exactly who the inspector is you're working with. Are they full-time? Are they part-time? And note that an inspection is just a snapshot in time. So you're there just for that day, and anything can change thereafter. So it's important to know that when you're at that inspection, that you're getting a very thorough inspection, and that you're really looking at all the components that are required for that. So in some counties, you may have, in some houses, you may have water and well. Your water may be well, and you may have a septic system versus town water and sewer. So these are important things to know ahead of time, so this way you can have those components checked and bring in a separate company if needed to inspect those components. You may have an oil tank that's there. It may be underground, it may be overground, but these are important things to know ahead of time before your inspection. And don't skip those tests. I cannot stress enough, knowing right now, especially with your attorney and your agents that are working with you all together, this is the time to know what's going on with that house. It's a very important thing to get, and it's important to use somebody that is licensed and knows what they're doing. You may have a great contractor you work with, bring them to the inspection, but a home inspector is going to have a very specific list of items to go through to make sure that that inspection is done very thoroughly. Now, when you're at the inspection, you want to ask questions. This is your best opportunity to really learn everything about the house, regardless of what level homeowner you may be. First-time homeowners especially, we want you to ask as many questions as you want. Do not be afraid to ask any questions. There are no silly questions, especially at this point. During the inspection, you should expect to have a very thorough inspection of the exterior components as well as the interior components. So as we're on the outside, we're going to be looking at the roof, we're going to be looking at the foundation on the exterior. But the one thing we're really going to be focusing on is diverting water away from the property. So if there's a lot of negative grading or anything like that, we're going to talk about that. Water is the #1 enemy of the home. Please note that when we're inside the inspection, we can only comment on what we see. So if there's things like blocking the wall and that sort of thing, these are things you're going to want to always make note of. We will call it out in the report, and some companies actually offer warranty protection to help cover that in case something comes up after the inspection that we couldn't see. And we're one of those companies. And one thing to note during the inspection, everything we find can be repaired. It's very important to know that. You're going to get a long report at the end of it usually that has a number of things, and this is where you're really going to sit with your attorney and your agent to prioritize what are the most important things that you need to get done there. It's very important that you get this process done, you get it done quickly. In today's market, houses are moving very fast and other offers are coming in. They still could be coming in even though you think you have an accepted offer. And this is the way that it works. So you really want to schedule that inspection as soon as possible, roughly about 24 to 72 hours if you can get that in there. So again, once that report comes in, you're going to review it with your team, focus on the major items, and the specialist may be required to come in, and that's okay. Sometimes you may find a component that needs additional evaluation, and that's all right. But again, you want to keep everybody in line with you and prioritize really what's most important.
So personally, when I get the repair request, or I should say an inspection report, I'm going to really look towards my client and my realtors to determine if anything should be addressed, and if it is, it has to be in the contract. If it's not in the contract, it doesn't exist. Veronica, what could you explain to our audience they should know about when they're making repair requests?
So after the inspection, if there are items that need to be repaired, we're always looking for major components. At least I discuss this with my clients. If there are any plumbing issues, leaks in the roof, foundation issues, which determine the water away from the house, plumbing, and termites. I'm probably skipping another one. I can't think of it if you can come up with it. But at the end of the day, those are the items that we're looking for, the major things. We're not looking for the paint needs to be painted again, or there's a crack here. Simple things like that can be taken care of. That's all cosmetic. So if those items are in order, then we're good to proceed in terms of meeting with the attorney, signing, and bringing your down payment. But if there's one item that is in one of those categories, then we discuss how severe the damage is, right? If it's a major thing, then we want to bring it back to the agent that's representing the seller to see if they're going to repair it. Most homes are being sold as is. I believe contracts say as is. So we want to make sure that we discuss them ahead of time. So when they sit with the attorney, the seller has already agreed that they're going to fix it. And then we're not wasting time adding something to the contract that later on they may deny. So we just want to kind of have that conversation ahead of time and see if the seller's willing to make these repairs. Sometimes they'll provide a credit, which is the same thing. They'll get to fix the item. And then sometimes they go, I don't want to fix anything. And then they're little minor things. Like it could be maybe a little leak in the sink, which is a minor thing, because that you could just call someone, they fix it really quick. So it's really a decision at that point how much the buyer wants the home. And I always prep my buyers before we even start looking that we may encounter all these scenarios. So it's just a matter of how much they want the home and they can make a decision. Obviously, as we represent them, our goal is to try to get them to fix it, but the ultimate decision comes from the seller. We just have to make it work somehow for them if it's the home for them.
Right. Two things I just want to add to that. From a seller's perspective, one thing to give you information ahead of time is to consider having a pre-list inspection done before your house is listed. This will help you understand everything going on with your home, so this way you can work with your realtor to know exactly what you want to fix and what you may want to leave to the buyer, and this way you kind of priced it accordingly, so this way there's less surprises when you actually get to that inspection. The other thing you mentioned was termites, which is a really important point because, as Heidi can mention, certain financing requirements like VA and FHA loans require a termite inspection.
Yep.
So these are great things to know ahead of time, so this way you're not surprised after the inspection.
So, Giovanni, one of the things Veronica pointed out is she preps her buyers on the potential things they can encounter, and the reason why that's very important, I find, because I've seen a lot of deals die when clients are unrealistic. How do you help manage expectation levels, and what would be your advice to a buyer when they want certain repairs done?
Well, first of all, no home will be perfect, and we know that. Even new construction homes are not perfect, especially nowadays. So we want to make sure that the house is sound, that you're able to live there, is habitable. So I prep my clients in knowing that as long as the boiler is working, the roof is good, the main components of the home is in good condition. Windows, those are major components and pricey components that later on can cost you some money. So if the home still has a couple of years, 5, 10, 15 years in those items, be prepared that you will change them at some point. But today, you're buying it, you should be in okay condition, you should be good. Minor items, I prep them that minor items you can change them all the time. And again, no home will be perfect. So be prepared to allocate some money in repairing your home while you enter the home.
So now, question for Heidi. So let's say, couple's been looking, they can't find a home that with the right inspection that they want, or they can't find a home that has the kitchen that they want, or the renovated bathroom that they want. What are options for buyers in that type of situation?
So we do have programs that will actually include home repairs. So let's say, you found the house that has the bedrooms that you want, but the kitchen it's old or the bathrooms are old. You can do renovation loans. So the way renovation loans work is, we give you the money for to purchase the house for the mortgage, but we also include the renovation. So let's say you're going to buy a house for $300,000, but it's going to take $50,000 to renovate everything you need. So we can do a mortgage for $350,000 on the renovation. So it includes the repairs. The way it works, it's you got to get the contractor approved and the project approved before we even submit the loan. And then as we get the mortgage approved, then the bank keeps releasing the money so the repairs can be done little by little till the work is completed.
So that's interesting. When I purchased my home, it was built in 1990, and by the time I purchased it, my inspector had told me, I didn't know Ralph back then, my inspector told me that the central AC units were past their life. At the time I knew from communication with the seller side that if I even touched on, because the AC's working, that they're past their life, that the deal would die. Would a rehab loan been available to me in the event that I wanted to replace the AC units?
Yes, it would have. Yep.
Okay.
Depending on the cost, because it doesn't have to be 50,000, even if it's just 10,000, $8,000, whatever it is, the upgrades that need to be done, it can be included. Yep.
Great. So that's actually one of the things I was trying to pull out there. I'm glad you said that. You could sometimes that $10,000 sticking point should not be a sticking point. And in today's market, what is $10,000 on a loan? What is that monthly to a client?
An additional $25.
$25 a month.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so a bottle of wine. So if
Yeah.
you guys want to just drink one bottle less, you can have that bathroom
Yeah.
treatment.
Never thought about that.
Yeah.
Per month, but you also get a tax write-off at least for that $25.
Yes.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, we got past the inspection, right? Now we're at contract signing, is my part. I'm gonna explain everything to the client. If you sign a contract and you don't know what you're signing, I know there's a lot of, I recently had a situation where an attorney did not speak Spanish, and he had Spanish-speaking clients. The clients signed the contract, and the price was off by $25,000, which we didn't find out until the day of closing.
Oh my God.
Oh, boy.
I won't go into who that was or what happened, but you just have to make sure that you understand, as the person signing a contract, don't trust the lawyer, because the lawyer is, is human and is only going by the memo, and the memos are prepared by the agents, and sometimes you're going to have, like we spoke about earlier, two agents involved. So which memo are they going to go off of, and are the terms correct? So make sure that everything you want is in that contract. And once you sign the contract and you're satisfied, it is my job to then sell it to the seller. If I'm representing the buyer, the seller then signs last. You are giving your down payment at the time of closing. Make sure the amount of the down payment was from the start in the offer, if you're giving less than the expected down payment. And then once you get it back, you're in contract. Now you're in contract, goes right back to Haiti. Haiti, what happens now?
Pretty much look at it as, I now have to put your story and present it to the underwriter for your mortgage to actually get approved. So I gather the contract. I'm going to gather your last 2 years income documentations, like W-2s for the last 2 years, the most recent pay stubs, and then we submit it to the underwriter. At that point, the underwriter looks at the file and gives us a commitment. At the same time, we order the appraisal. So at the same time the file goes into the underwriter, it also goes, for the appraisal order. The appraisal is the second inspection that happens that will look at the value of your home. So if you're buying a house for $400,000, the bank wants to make sure that you are actually buying a house that it's worth $400,000. So they do the comparables with the recent sales, and based on the condition of the house and the condition of the recent sales for the last 12 months, they come up with the value. So if we appraise, we let you appraise, everybody's happy. There's been incidents when we sometimes don't appraise, especially in this crazy market. So if we don't appraise, you have to be ready to, negotiate. Your attorney's going to go back and negotiate with the seller, or if you love the house and you're willing to pay over the appraised value, we just write up a contract saying, write her to the contract saying that you're moving ahead with that. And at that time, after commitment and appraisal comes in, your attorney will also order the title. So we review the title, make sure everything's clear. The bank is looking for a clear title. So the only lien that can be attached to that house when you do close on that mortgage, it's only the mortgage that you're getting. So we have to have a clear title. Once we review title and we review the appraisal and your income documents, we verified employment. And then at that point, we will issue a clear to close to your attorney, and then you guys do the rest.
So I want to step back a little bit. Some of the things that Heidi was mentioning, mortgage commitment. So you were pre-approved, but you don't actually have a commitment. A commitment is when the bank is agreeing that they're going to fund your loan. In your contract, you're going to have a specified amount of days to make sure that you get a commitment. I get a lot of questions on, is my down payment safe? Well, yes, provided you are diligent and you don't get into contract and go on vacation for 2 or 3 weeks and don't get documents to your lender. You have a reasonable amount of time. Some contracts will have actually a finite amount of days that you actually have to apply to the lender. So, this is a very important investment. Get everything that the lender needs right away to the lender. Follow the lender's advice regarding what to do with your bank accounts, what to do with credit, don't miss payments. And if you can't meet, although you're being diligent, if you can't meet the days provided to get your mortgage commitment, make sure your attorney requests an extension. If you don't request an extension, it becomes a cash deal, and if you're denied, you lose your down payment. So if you're diligent and you make sure everything's provided in time, and your attorney requests the extension, your down payment is safe. Now, ladies, what are some of the things that goes on behind the scenes as an agent while they're working with the bank and after they sign contracts?
I'm sorry. I want to go back really quickly to what happens if you don't get an extension on the commitment?
Great question. If you don't get an extension, then the buyer has two options. Go forward, and although you're able to get a loan, because the seller doesn't care how they get the money, it actually becomes a cash deal, meaning if you don't get the mortgage, you do lose your down payment. Or you cancel and say, well, you're not giving me extension, I want my money back.
Okay, so at the point that they ask for the extension and they're not given the extension, they can get their money back and not lose their down payment.
Correct.
So they have to be diligent to make sure they meet the commitment deadline that's in the contract.
That's what's so important. People think I'm in contract
And they're safe.
And they're safe and they don't get the documents they need. Some people are told you have to file your taxes right away. And the time for the commitment ends and they still haven't filed their taxes. Yes, you could lose that home and all the money that you spent in the process. You know, yes, Ralph is going to make more money in your next home, but you don't want that to be the case. You're going to have to spend money on that appraisal. You may owe money to the title company, and you may have paid your attorney a retainer fee. So it's very important that you're out there and you're responsible. You know, treat it like when you were in school and you had a paper due. You know, there's no point in coming in late because you're going to face a penalty, and you don't want the penalty to be your down payment.
Now, can the buyer say, well, I signed my contract with my attorney. Shouldn't he have reached out to me that my commitment is due?
So everyone does different things. In my writer, I typically try to have wording that doesn't happen, but some attorneys won't let me have that language in. It's your money at stake, so you can leave it totally up to the attorney. Or you can be on that attorney to make sure you see proof or maybe are copied on that email requesting that extension.
Okay.
I would do that beforehand. Fortunately, I myself have just purchased a program that automatically sends that email out. My clients are going to get an email that says, open this, enter in this account, and then once you do so, you want to log in again, but you'll see the whole journey. But not everyone has that software or invest that kind of money in their clients. That's also why you'll have different, sometimes you get what you pay for. If you're getting a attorney that advertises $750 and you never meet him and you never see the attorney, and maybe there is no attorney, I don't know, but you're not going to have those situations. And typically, the people that I find that have those issues that we were just alluding to, because they went with someone that probably had terrible reviews online too, because they're constantly losing clients' down payments because they're not asking the extension. It makes a very stressful process. So going back to what I was talking about before, so okay, now we've got a commitment. All right. Now we're gearing up for closing. Before closing, what's the one thing that has to happen that you guys do with your client before you allow them to go to the table?
Well, while the process is going with the mortgage, let's say there were some repairs that we were able to negotiate into it. We make sure that we follow up, that those repairs were done, first of all, and we have receipts of an actual professional did those repairs. If it was plumbing, if it was boiler, if it was a septic tank, we wanted receipts that way we can actually close. Otherwise, since that's in the contract and that's what we requested in order to close, those need to be in place. And we need to have a final walkthrough. That final walkthrough is important because that will make sure that the house is still there, it's existing, there was no damage to it, and it's the way we saw it. And if there were repairs needed, those repairs were done.
And often we're actually asked to attend those. So we do a separate inspection basically through as part of that walkthrough.
Yes.
And it's sometimes, especially this time of year, we can't always inspect everything. So we can't, if their pool is sealed up, if the sprinkler system is sealed up, if there's a lot of snow on the roof. This is the time when we can come back at that final walkthrough usually to be able to inspect those things. And that's where Stephen will have worked all that out with the agent and on the listing side in terms of whatever contingencies you may have or however else you want to address those items that we could not inspect at those times.
If pipes were burst, if pipes burst.
Yeah, in the cold weather that happens.
If floors broke.
That did
So
happen.
Veronica and I recently had a closing in Mount Vernon, and she did a walkthrough with her client. And tell us what happened there.
The garage was locked, so we couldn't inspect it. So I believe they held money in escrow, and then when I went after the closing, we finally got the keys. We couldn't even get the garage open or closed, so we were unable to inspect it prior to the closing. But then Stephen, as the attorney, held money just to make sure that that was functional. And then in the case that it wasn't, in our case, they gave her credit to get a new door.
Right, so it's very important. Bottom line is, if you do not do a walkthrough with your agent before closing, once you close in New York, you cannot sue the seller afterwards. So you want to make sure everything is working. You want to flush the toilet. For some reason, I always have toilet problems. I think it's my number one thing after closing. And I guess people are worried that's the only thing they're using the bathroom. Don't worry about it. Flush the toilet. Turn on the stove. Don't leave it on though. Don't walk out the house after you turn on the stove. But make sure everything works and let your attorney know. And make sure it's addressed either in writing or by you getting money in your hand at closing, because there's nothing able to do afterwards. I should have actually mentioned this before. Heidi mentioned getting a clear to close. A lot of times I get clients when there's a clear to close, and all of a sudden, when are we closing? So once you get a clear to close from the bank, you have to make sure all parties are available. I understand everyone works. Closings do not happen on the weekends. They do not happen after hours. So try to make yourself available, because the times that are available are going to be limited, because you have a bank attorney involved, you have a sales attorney, and you have a buyer's attorney, as well as a title company that has to come. And although the agents haven't been coming as much during the COVID time to the closings, you're going to have documents that sometimes the agents need to sign. So there's a lot of people that have to come to closing. So we're going to get to the closing as soon as possible, and you're going to get your numbers once the bank attorney gives the buyer's attorney what's available after your loan. So Heidi, can you explain to them, to the audience here, they're borrowing $500,000. Are they going to get exactly $500,000 at closing?
No, because there's a lot that goes into effect, like the fees, right? So once I get a clear to close, what happens is the bank attorney gets in touch with the buyer's attorney. At that point, we get final fees, right? So the final fees, it's what you're gonna pay on the mortgage tax, title, anything, insurance, anything that has to do with your closing, that's gonna go in that closing disclosure, it's gonna end up adding up. So you might owe, the bank, the fee, let's say the bank fees were $2,500, right? So all those are gonna get deducted, so it's not gonna be exactly to the T what your loan amount is, because all other fees are gonna be involved also.
So I can imagine right now all the uncomfortable people that just heard that and just want to know, I'm not buying a property at all. Look at that. Is it going to be a shock to them, the fees that are going to be deducted?
Absolutely not, because we actually post those fees are presented to you on your loan estimate when we first do the signatures to submit the loan into underwriting. So you always gonna get an estimate of what it's going to look like. It's not gonna be exact to the T, but we're pretty good at estimating of what that cost it's going to be, and we usually go into those details right before we go into underwriting.
And in fact, there's a new law. I shouldn't say it's new now. It's been out for a couple years now. But you will sign your final closing disclosure before closing 3 days before, so you don't have that shock that you've heard of other people in the past. At this point, I just want to let anyone say any final words of wisdom to our audience. That's pretty much the whole process. But Veronica, is there anything you want to add?
There is. So we brought up a lot of points and other challenges that buyers are going to go through. And that's when you need a buyer agent representing you so that you avoid those things. The first one we brought up was when they sign contracts, how the mistake was done with the dollar amount. If you have your buyer's agent representing you, it's their job to make sure that the accurate information goes to your attorney. And it's their job to review the contract and sometimes even meet with you when you go sign it to understand that you're clear as to what you're buying and that the right purchase price is on there. So you would not have that hiccup. That was a big hiccup there. And then the second thing we mentioned was when we talked about appraisal. So before we put an offer on a property, if you are represented by a buyer's agent, their job is to pull up comps and tell you what the value of that home is to begin with before you put your offer. So you're not putting in an offer and later on it's not going to appraise and then you come up with that challenge. And then at that point you may lose the house if the seller isn't willing to lower the price or you're willing to pay the difference. So that can be also avoided ahead of time. And then one of the other challenges we talked about were I guess there was a third one, walkthrough. With the agent, once again they'll make sure that everything is taken care of for you from the moment you did the appraisal and then when you did the final walkthrough, like Giovanni had explained. And then the final one, I think Stephen had asked, the shock of the money at the closing. So at the initial consultation, we're actually discussing, along with the pre-approval that you received and how much your mortgage payment is going to be, is the monies you will need from the down payment to the closing cost. So you would have no shock by the time you get to the closing table. And usually at the end, when we recap with the client, it always is literally near the amount, or you wind up having extra money that you're like, hey, happy, I have extra $5,000. So we like to overestimate to make sure that you're going to be comfortable and there's no surprise or you're going to run out of money at the closing table. So there won't be a surprise there either. So once again, having a buyer's agent like Giovanni and I would simply be to make the process easy for you so that you don't have to have those challenges that everyone talked about. And they're pretty much going through the whole process from beginning to end, and you will know exactly step by step what's happening and why the things are being done the way they are, including with the commitment and the deadlines. It's the job also of the buyer's agent to make sure that you're meeting that deadline, so you don't have to worry about that the attorney didn't contact you or that you didn't have chance because you were busy working that you didn't meet those deadlines. And that's the purpose of having a buyer's agent represent you from the process from beginning all the way to the end to your dream home.
Anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, so I would like to add, the bank does not require it, but personally, I always advise all my customers to try to keep at least 2 to 3 payments, mortgage payments, in the bank after closing, because there's nothing worse, like you said, the toilet breaks, boiler breaks. I would like you to have to make a decision between either making your mortgage payment or fixing the problem that you have at the home. So always leave a little bit of cushion, and I think that 2 to 3 mortgage payments, it's a safe cushion for you to have. Another thing, don't go too higher from your rent payment. So I usually tend to advise, do about 25-50% over your rent payment max, because then it's comfortable. You don't want to go from paying, $2,500 rent into a $5,000 mortgage that actually it's going to be a big payment shock. And then, so extra money, and definitely don't go too high from your rent payment.
Yes, you definitely want to be able to still be able to go to dinner and not have to just worry about making a mortgage payment if you went too high.
Yep.
So in case I misstated this point, at contract signing, you're going to have a deposit check, a down payment check available to give to the seller, and the seller, because I get this a lot of times, the seller's attorney, I should say, is going to cash that at the time of contract signing. The balance of your closing costs will be collected at closing. So just be prepared to have that money in your account. If you have to transfer it over from savings to checking, do so, because it is going to be deducted. Giovanni, Ralph, any closing comments?
Well, I think that the important also factor here is to have a team. To have, as a buyer or even a seller, as a buyer in this case, you need to have a team. You need to have a buyer agent, just like Veronica said, because you need good representation and you need somebody to look after your best interests. You need to have a trustee attorney, a trustee inspector, a lender. That's your team, and that team you'll be able to contact them pretty much any time. I mean, we can be reached at our cell phones, and if you have any questions, if something came up, a thought, or something to address, we'll be able to speak with you and figure it out.
Yeah. Make sure that team are dedicated professionals like everyone around this table. This is all we do. We are not part-timers. We are dedicated to this craft of what our specialty is and working with you through this entire process. And even after the process, after it's closing, all of us are available to you afterwards. Should you have any questions, any follow-ups, anything you need, we're here for you.
So my clients, I am your realtor for life, and they literally call me about everything.
Man, how many clients have we done together?
And then I call Steven.
All right, folks. Well, thank you for joining me. I hope this was helpful. If you want us to expand any particular topics, just give us a call. Our contact information, like I said before, is going to be available to you after this video. Thank you. Hope you're enjoying the videos that you've watched today. They're not meant to be a substitution for speaking with your legal professional, but just an educational tool. Thank you.